Team, how are we? Welcome back to another episode of the High Performance Coach podcast. I hope all is good in your world. And it's been a little while since I've done a solo episode. We've had some incredible guests over the last few weeks, and I hope you've been able to take some value. If you haven't done so already, then I highly recommend you go back and check out the last 5 to 6 episodes. But today we're going to go through something that I believe is incredibly important and I believe is incredibly prevalent at this time of year, based upon where coaches are going into the summer months. This can be a little bit of a sticky and tricky time because you'll have clients that have joined at the start of the year. They've now accomplished and achieved their goals, and now they've almost run out of runway and they're now going on their own way. And on the flip side of that, you have prospects that are maybe telling you that they want to get started, but they want to wait until they get summer out the way. People just don't feel as connected. And then you're starting to just feel as though you're stuck in this messy middle because you've got clients that are leaving and you're not necessarily seeing new clients come through the door due to the barriers and the limitations and their current perspective and their thought process around what's coming up over the coming months within their social calendar. So I'm going to break down 5 key principles that I believe it will help you win this summer, have more sustainability, have more fulfillment and enjoyment, and go into the end of the summer in the driving seat and one step ahead. But before I do so, I just wanted to let you know that over the last week or so, we have just launched our free high performance business success test. This test will take you less than 3 minutes, and it will give you an understanding and a level of awareness around exactly where your business is right now and how you're currently performing. Not only that, off the back of completing that, you will then be given a free download based upon the scores that you get, which will help you plug the gap. Some of those will include a 30-day content and marketing plan, a lead generation plan, how to acquire your next 3 to 5 clients, how to build an industry-leading program, the worksheets, how to build a better culture, how to improve your check-in process so it's now more efficient, more effective, and you can deliver an even better quality experience and set of results without you now feeling as though you're spending your life doing check-ins, and a whole host more. If you want to be able to go and take that test, hit the link in the show notes below, or alternatively head over to my Instagram bio. You'll be able to access it there. Like I said, it will take you less than 3 minutes. It will give you an abundance of clarity, and also the strategy and the resources that you'll be able to download off the back of that will help you enormously, regardless of the level that you are currently at. Okay, let's get stuck into today. How to win the summer in your fitness business, and what are the 5 key principles that I believe that you need to have in place based upon my lessons, experience, fuck-ups and failures, and things that I'm currently seeing that are working incredibly well in the marketplace. Number 1, this became more prevalent based upon a call that I had with one of our coaches a little while ago. And we were talking about their customer journey and what they were currently doing. And they were communicating, obviously, how they have the check-in process, they have the green, amber, red, they have a weekly group call. They communicate with every single client based upon obviously where they are. And then obviously if they have clients that are in the red that are stuck or they need to recommit a client, they'll then get them onto a call. And the first thing that kind of came to my mind is that we should not be getting on calls with clients just in the red, because there's a few key considerations surrounding this. Number 1, your clients will then see your value based upon, well, when I'm stuck, when things aren't going well, then obviously I get on call. So when things are going well, they're not going to potentially see the value. Number 2, I don't believe you have the capacity to be able to coach them to the best of your capability, because when somebody's obviously in the red, aka they're stuck, from an emotional regulation perspective, they aren't able to see things logically. You also go into that call thinking, okay, what do I now need to do? How do I need to communicate? What do I now need to put in place, obviously, as a coach, and how do I need to conduct myself, most importantly, to be able to then shift them and allow them to be able to move from red to amber to green and obviously get them back, obviously winning again. And that obviously comes with a degree of like an expectation. And I believe that you're just really limiting the potential that that person has, because what happens is when you're on a call with somebody where they're actually in a good place, the exploration, the curiosity, the conversation, the connection, the depth that you can go to is so much bigger and is so much greater. And that experience alone and what that does in terms of being able to get them to see things differently is absolutely insane. Not only that, you're able to have a level of conversation that you wouldn't be able to do if they were in the red, meaning you can now start to explore other avenues and allow them to see, obviously, the way in which you can coach and obviously the expansive level of depth that you now have and what they can see that's potentially in front of them. And also, you can communicate what are going to potentially be some of the roadblocks, some of the hurdles, some of the bottlenecks that are now going to be ahead of them, and how you can now realign them. Because when things are going well, that can also lead to a degree of like comfort, contentment, and complacency. And when people are going through change, it's important that it's not just about getting there, but also staying there. That's going to be absolutely integral. And especially if your client's expectations depend upon obviously how you've sold them in, is being to help them get to X or Y result within X time frame. Well, then if that's the only thing that they're now centered on, that's only the conversation you've really had. And there's not been that next level or next layer of depth of relationship. I believe the results that you're now going to be able to have are going to be limited. And also, what they see in terms of the journey they can go on with you is also pretty limited as well. So number one, if you've been getting on calls with clients that are just in the red, I would highly advise that you now don't just do that, or you're looking to recommit them. I would be very much focused on, okay, let's now look at the customer journey. Let's now look at the process. Let's now look at what are going to be the key points at which I now believe, obviously, a high level conversation is now going to be advantageous. Now, of course, this is going to be dependent upon your coaching service, your delivery, the product, and obviously all of those good things. But I believe the quality and the depth of your relationship will determine the quality of their results. And that's been so front facing over the last kind of 10 years or so within like my own world and the level of result that I've been able to attain with clients. So I'd be taking a look right now and going, right, okay, instead of thinking about who's quote unquote in the red and who's stuck, who's in the amber, who's in the green? And how can I now actually open myself up to be able to go, hey, dude, just want to jump onto a 15-minute call and catch up because there's some things that I'd love to explore and then see, and you obviously want to have a process, but then there's also this, like you can see with this appropriate curiosity where that now goes. And ultimately for you, that's going to give you great data, great feedback. It's going to allow you to connect with your client on an even higher level. And it's not doing a call for call's sake. It's about making sure there's obviously a purpose and there's a level of intention behind it, because if it becomes too frequent, well, they almost like lose, well, what's the point? And this is actually just taking up my time and we're just getting on a call for a chinwag, which is obviously not what you want to do. But if you can now align, obviously, more comprehensive touch points and communication channels at certain points in somebody's journey, not just when they're stuck, that's going to be so powerful for the longevity, for the sustainability, and also for the quality of the result that that person is also able to achieve, and also how far you can now take that person, because quite often, obviously, what you see and what they see are two completely different things. So that's been something that I know has worked incredibly well for so many. And for us, and also for me, when I was in the body composition world, was absolutely integral to the results, the retention, the referrals that we were able to accomplish. And also, I think from an enjoyment perspective, it was so much more enjoyable. Instead of just now thinking I'm only ever getting on calls just to solve problems, that level of openness and conversation and curiosity can be so incredible. And it's just as enjoyable for the client as it is actually more so for you. And that brings us quite nicely into number two, building a clear customer journey. And obviously not just thinking about the A to B, but then B to C, C to D, and looking at what does that now look like and how are we making people aware of this? And a really simple analogy that I could use here is like, it's like getting in a car and going from Scotland to London. If you don't have a sat nav and you don't really kind of know where you're going, but you just now know that you need to get to London, that can be quite an overwhelming, uncertain, and quite an apprehensive journey, because you don't know what's in front of you, you don't know what's ahead. And this is also why Uber works so incredibly well, because it's allowing you to now feel as though that you're in control, because you've got a level of awareness around where your driver is and how long it's going to take in order for them to get there, which actually removes friction and allows you to lower expectation, which then obviously enhances the fulfillment and also the experience. So if you were to drive from London to Scotland or Scotland to London without a sat nav, in comparison to having a sat nav, think about the differentiation in that experience. Think about the differentiation in the experience of like the calm, the control, being able to pre-plan, knowing what's up ahead, so that you can now make sure that you can mitigate whatever. You might need a pee, or you might want a coffee, or whatever it now might potentially be. So you can make the experience as good as possible. This is now going to be exactly the same with your customer journey. Thinking about what are the key milestones. What are then going to be the peaks and the valleys along the way? So let's say it's like now helping somebody get into great shape this summer. What's going to be the first milestone they're going to work towards? All right, it might be, I'm going to make this up, they're going to now drop the first 5 kilos, and their adherence score with their training is now going to be 90% plus on the tracking metric. Okay, what are going to be the peaks? What are going to be the highs that they're now going to experience? That now might be this uninformed optimism, because they're now starting something new. So their motivation is now incredibly high. They're incredibly excited. about what it is that they're now stepping into. A valley now might potentially be that a social occasion arises, or stress at work obviously now builds a mount and they have to stay in the office longer, or they've got this meeting, or they've got this networking dinner that is challenging them because they're still going through change and they've not stepped into this new identity. And they're now looking at, how do I now navigate this? Because they will always and quite often default back to old behavior and what feels comfortable. So it's about understanding, okay, well, what are going to be the highs and what are going to be the lows? And then also from a customer journey, from a communication perspective, how can I now make sure that we can navigate, communicate, we can obviously preempt, and we can ensure that we can support them to the best of our capacity. Then when you think about it, right, okay, this person has now been able to, you can have, let's say, 3 or 4 milestones as an example to be able to get to that goal. It might be less, it might be more, depending upon obviously where you are. We do this on an individual basis with each coach that we work alongside. That now might be, okay, phase 2 or milestone 2 is now maintain your end result for 30 plus days. That now might be milestone 2. And within that, it's like understanding, okay, well, what's then the biggest challenge that they're going to face? Well, number one, when they came to you, again, I'm making an assumption, and this is a made-up example, they were in pain. They were frustrated. They didn't like the way in which they looked. They didn't like the way in which they felt. Now they've dropped X amount of kilos and they're going into summer. They feel like a different person. They feel absolutely amazing. So the thing that they were running away from and the activation energy they had initially is no longer the same activation energy. So they're then trying to use that same fuel to keep driving them forwards, which we now know is going to create a disconnect because, well, they're not that person anymore and they don't have those problems anymore. So we now know within like that process, before they get to the end result, that a conversation is now going to need to be had based around obviously realigning expectations, based around why is this important to you? What and who do we now need to be? What does the next step now look like? What's your expectations of success over the next 30, 60, 90 days, whatever it now might be? Being able to communicate from a coaching perspective, what you now see up ahead based upon your experience, which again, might be obviously people revolving and going backwards because they've now not been able to develop the systems and the skill to be able to sustain the results they've been able to accomplish and achieve. So you being able to preempt and have those conversations and have that call and being able to communicate that obviously in ahead of time can be great. No different from the sat nav telling you that there's potentially an accident up ahead. So do you know what? You now know that you're hungry, you want a cup of coffee, and you want to be able to just go and take a break before then you actually get yourself back on the road and you have to prepare yourself for potentially sat in traffic for a little while. It just completely changes the frame and completely changes the game. So think about, what are the key milestones that your clients are going to work towards? What's the key outcome? And then what are going to be the peaks and the valleys? And then off the back of that, aligning their expectations. So great question. How will we now know if you're progressing? What are we going to measure? What will we see? What will we notice? How can that be an agreed communication that you can now have with them? Number 2, out of curiosity, what are your expectations of success from this phase? Because often we have a bias, and obviously what we think and what they think are 2 completely different things. And also, what success maybe looked like initially is no longer the definition of success, and that's actually changed, and the landscape looks differently. So then, if we don't ask that question, there's quite often a disconnect because you think their expectation of success should be this, and their expectation of success is that, and that can obviously now lead to a lack in communication, coaching competence, and also you then not being able to be effective in what it is you're doing because you're coaching somebody through a process that now isn't actually aligned, and what you think that they want and actually what they want to want is 2 completely different things. And also it's the management of expectations as well, which I think is absolutely huge. Next question, why is this important to you? What are you doing this for? This will change and evolve as they go through this journey. And again, it's about realigning and getting them to reconnect, because understanding that activation energy got them started is not going to be the same energy that's going to keep them going, and it's being able to reconnect with that. And then finally, what's your kryptonite? And this was actually something that Ben said to me the other day. What's your kryptonite? What and how will we now know if you're basically sabotaging, like not doing what you need to do? Like what are going to be some of the behaviors that we're now going to see, or what are going to be some of the challenges that you now know that are going to be ahead of you that you're going to bump up against, that we need to recognize that we now know it will keep you stuck? Or what will we see from you? So for example, it might be like, if you now know that I'm going quiet and I'm not responding to you in messages, that's usually a sign that I'm hiding and I'm not doing the work. Okay, cool. So what I'm hearing is, yeah, that's correct. So can we agree that if that happens, you're happy for me to challenge you on that and send you a message that says bump, because we now know within that moment that resistance that you're currently facing is the price that you have to pay to get to the next point. And it's so important that we can now start to shift behavior. And that's where you need the greatest amount of support, because that's when you've been stuck so much before. Okay, brilliant. So that's now something that you can agree and you can just understand what and how they tick. And then it allows them to be able to understand also how you're communicating and why you're communicating in that way. This customer journey can be as long or as short. And of course, it needs to be specific and it needs to be completely aligned to you. And not only that, this works so well, obviously, over the summer months, because often, let's say a client has come to you with the goal of, again, being able to get in great shape for their summer holiday. They've been firing on all cylinders. They've been dropping body fat. Everything's been going tickety-boo. They're turning up to all of the things that you're currently doing. They're checking in every single week. Well, now they're going away on summer. They're going away on a holiday, or they've got the summer months coming up, and they've got these social occasions. They're not checking in as regularly. They are no longer focusing on fat loss. And although that you now know that they're focused on, let's say, maintenance and stability and being able to navigate the summer season and being able to just still continue to remain consistently good and navigate, obviously, this period, in their mind, they're going, well, I'm not really using the service in the same way that I used to. I'm not using the features. I'm not really progressing. I don't really feel as though that I've got a goal to work towards at the moment. So they're like, I'm probably better just pausing, or they don't want to let you down. So it's easier just to go, yeah, you know what, I'm done. I'm okay. I've got so much coming up over the summer months. I'm just going to leave it and I'll pick things back up. And in your mind as a coach, that's incredibly frustrating, because you now know, again, they're getting there, they're staying there, and the importance of being able to teach them, educate, guide, and provide them with the platform to be able to navigate through. And you now know, actually, it's probably even more valuable having you in their corner, but it's just realigning those expectations of what success, and also what value now looks like. Value before was checking in every single week. Value before for them is getting the result and seeing the number on the scales coming down. Value before was insert, well, obviously whatever was important to them. Value now over the next 6 weeks might be being able to now ensure that they've got a plan and a strategy to be able to navigate and just sustain and maintain where they are currently. It might be actually they're not going to check in on a weekly or communicate with you on a weekly cadence. It's now going to be done on a fortnightly, or you're going to have a touch point at this particular point to be able to go through X, Y, or Z, because they now don't want to feel like they're letting you down. And also, if you keep using the same mechanism all the time, well, it's then just repeated, and it can get a little bit mundane and boring, and they can get a little bit frustrated because you're asking them how they're getting on and how's things and bum, 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 bum. And if they are in a different place, then that's going to lead them to feeling a little bit triggered just through my own experience. So build the clear customer journey, have the clear communication channels, make sure you're able to build a bit of a roadmap around the peaks and the valleys that they're now going to be experiencing potentially. You can create obviously a bit of a kind of, hypothetical scenario, because again, like, it might not happen with certain individuals, but you're just making them aware, obviously, of that. And actually really focus on how can I invest even harder into my product and my service, and not just continue to do the same thing over and over and over and over again every single week, but recognizing that people have different needs, different wants, different values, different beliefs at different times and phases of the year. And if you can navigate that, then it actually allows you to manage their expectations, how they currently see you as a service. And again, if you're getting on calls with them more regularly, you're able to actually develop and further a depth of relationship, which can be incredibly powerful. Now, don't get me wrong, we have some clients that don't have any calls with their clients whatsoever because said client doesn't want to, isn't aligned, which is absolutely cool. But it's just understanding, all right, well, what's going to be the best and the most effective way for us to now be able to communicate moving forward? And that's a great question that you can now ask as well. Number 3, I think there's a huge belief system bottleneck, because it can be quite easy, especially when you go on social media. It's like, nobody's buying this summer. Everybody's got X, Y, and Z coming up. And you start to see the narrative that everybody else is now saying. Also, you have potentially a few conversations with clients now leaving, taking a step away. They're going on summer holidays. And now you're starting to feel as though that, right, okay, I've had some leads come in, but they're now telling me that they basically want to get started after the summer months because of the things that they've got going on. So you start to go, well, what's the point? I'll just wait until after X is finished and then I'll start pushing on. But the summer period for me does not just determine the progression and the opportunity over the summer months when so many other coaches are thinking in that exact manner, but it also allows you to put yourself in the driving seat and put yourself way ahead going into the months of September, because I'm a massive believer and a massive advocate that the work that you do now is the results that you'll yield in 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 months time. So if you now operate from occasionally great and not consistently good because you now believe that the marketplace is now insert whatever, well, I believe that you're massively limiting yourself. Now, of course, it's important for you to be able to get clear over what you want. We have some coaches that go into the summer months, they're like, listen, I'm more than happy to put my foot on the brake. I'm more than happy to take a step away, because they now know that from a plan and a strategy perspective, we've planned the first half of this year to be centered around achieving A, B, C, and D. The summer months to then be focused on like maintenance, stability, and actually realignment for them to be able to rest, go away on holiday, enjoy themselves, etc. And then to push back on with this launch, this product, this program release going into the second half of the year. But when you're not clear, you don't have a plan, that's when it can quite often lead to a little bit of volatility, because you're like, I just need to make sales. Instead of actually now looking at, okay, life by design, business by design, at the start of the year, okay, what am I launching? When am I launching it? What am I now looking for? If I look at my holidays, my trips, my experiences, what I'm actually now looking for from this business, have I been able to build that in? Some people will want to put their foot on the brake and take a step away and actually now pull back over the summer months. Other people will want to push on, depending upon maybe how the first half of the year maybe didn't go their way, as an example, or a change in circumstance. But I definitely think looking at your own belief system and looking at how do I now operate from consistently good. And here's my experience of the summer months, because there's been some years where it's been a little bit slower and lower, and there's been other years that it's been incredibly abundant. But every single year, when I was in the body composition world, I would have messages without fail from people who were on holiday, who were lying on a sun lounger, who were off work. They had more time to be able to think. They had more time to consume content. I think there was also a greater degree of obviously exposure with regards to obviously how they were feeling, because again, they were on a summer holiday with their the majority of their clothes off. And if they live in the UK, that's very few and far between in terms of the good days, which obviously makes them far more aware. And I would have so many messages from people who were currently away on holiday that had seen my content, because it was obviously so targeted and aligned to that level of understanding, that I would be getting messages and I'd be booking calls for people once they came off their holiday, because they've been seeing my content over the summer, that would now obviously lead to them making a start and wanting to take action. And I was the first person they now thought of. So I believe there's huge opportunity. But it does come down to your belief system. It comes down to your values. It comes down to what you want and how you want your summer to look. But if you're now looking to push on and you're living in the narrative of, well, nobody's buying, everybody's going to wait until summer's over, what's the point? I can't get clients. Every coach mentor tells me that the summer months are notoriously slow. Well, I would basically go, where's the opportunity? Because if everybody else is zigging, well, how can I now zag? Because if everybody else is operating from that narrative, well, you've got a huge chance. And not only that, the confidence that builds, the momentum that creates, what that does for you is absolutely huge. And although you might not necessarily see a direct ROI, you will, because you put in the work and you do the reps. And if you're doing the reps and nobody else is now doing it, it's always going to come to fruition, especially if your marketing, messaging, communication, and obviously the strategy you have is on point. But also going into September, October, November, you're going to be the person. Why? Because you've been the one that's been consistent. You've been planting the seeds. You've been building the know, like, love, and trust. You've been building the connection. They have now been seeing your name pop up, seeing your content, watching you speak, so much more. They've been seeing even more of your results. So you've now gone to the top of the tree. So I would love for you to challenge your own belief system. And I would say that there are plenty of coaches who are having record months. They're having an abundance of clients coming through the door. And everything operates in seasons and cycles. And it also depends upon your market as well. Because we have some coaches who work with a certain market and they don't care that it's summer. Doesn't matter what time of the year it is. It's completely irrelevant. And in some circumstances, some instances, actually for some coaches, having clients based upon their demographic start in the summer is actually more advantageous. So I want you to be able to look at this through and challenge, obviously, your own thinking and look at the behaviors you're then embodying and not being able to limit yourself based upon that belief system, because I believe that's the slight edge that will either take you one step closer to where you want to be or move you one step further away. Number 4, I've kind of communicated this, but having a 365 plan, breaking down the entirety of the year. What are you launching? When are you launching it? How are you launching it? All right, what's your strategy and what's your approach, obviously, for those? How do you want your life to look? And not only that, sometimes when you talk about the long game, it's all well and good, but there's people that'll be listening to this and going, okay, Joe, well, that's great, but I now need clients right now. And in that situation, my first thing is, well, the sooner you start playing the longer game, the sooner the shorter game starts to like win and you start to see the results. But not only that, if you're looking at it through, well, okay, I'm going to blend the long game, I get that, but I need clients right now. Look at the short term. Break down what's the biggest constraint? What's the biggest limiting factor that's stopping prospects signing up to you right now? Example, this could potentially be cost. This could potentially be they've got a summer holiday coming up and they don't want to get started because they don't want to miss out on 2 weeks. This could potentially be that they've worked with so many other coaches before and they've failed so many times that actually they're now so skeptical. So if you're like, I need clients and I need to make sure that obviously I can create a little bit of sustainability and I can't just focus on this long game because I'm in a position where actually now I need clients because that's the absolute priority. Price, what's the lowest barrier to entry? What can you now shift, change, and alter that might potentially just now lower that barrier and gives somebody that opportunity to step in? That might be a differentiation in your service or your delivery. It might be a slight change in your price point. Number two, if they've got a 2 week summer holiday coming up or a 1 week summer holiday coming up, but they want to get started, but they don't want to miss out on those 2 weeks. Okay, not a problem at all. We'll basically just add an extra 2 weeks on to the end of your coaching program, which basically means you're not going to miss out. And not only that, an added bonus, when you go away on holiday, you're also going to have me in your back pocket and you're going to be actually able to go away and enjoy yourself, but also navigate that and come back feeling great and probably feeling better and having sustained or limited damage as much as possible. So you now don't feel as though you're even further behind. Number three, if it's the fear of failure or so skeptical about the experiences they've had previously, okay, put in a 30-day like it or leave it. After 30 days, if it's not for you, you can basically walk away. Not a problem, because I have so much confidence and belief in what we do and how we do things that I'm open to that. And I need you just to be able to experience that first step. So again, that's just you now taking on a little bit more of the load and you taking on a little bit more of the guarantee. And yes, you know, in some instances, people will say, well, that's me now devalue my service and all these other good things. But if you're in a position where you now need to be able to bring clients into your business because you need to be able to make cash for you to be able to pay the bills, being able to blend that short term with a longer game strategy and approach and that foresight, if you only ever operate from that short term, you're literally going to be spinning your wheels constantly. You're always going to be revolving. But if that's something you now need to do and you know that you've got an abundance of people there that you can genuinely help, that you now know you can genuinely impact, but they've got these limiting factors and these roadblocks ahead of them, and you now know they're going to benefit making a start sooner rather than later, then you can use those things to be able to now actually take somebody on that journey and for you to now be able to get what you want and what you now need, and also what they also now want and need, and it ends up being a win-win-win. And then finally, this ties into the long game. Use the summer to build the runway. What's the biggest problem that you now know that your prospects are currently facing? It might be the summer slump. It might be the back to school. It might be that they've now, got in shape, they dropped body fat, and now for the 10th year in a row, they're now going to be going back into this cycle of just feeling frustrated going into the winter months because they haven't got motivation, and insert all the other things that we now know. There's 1,000 different things that we could communicate here based upon obviously your market, but think, what's the biggest problem that you now know that your prospects are currently facing? What are they unaware of? And also, what are they aware of? And then what are they currently thinking? How can you start to articulate their problems better than they can explain themselves? Through your content, through your messaging, through your storytelling. And use this summer to just give, add value, connect, communicate, and talk around the challenges, the problems, the barriers that they're currently bumping up against, how they're potentially thinking, what's currently keeping them stuck. And then what are some solutions that they can put in place? What are some things that they can now do? And how can you then tie that into a lead magnet? How can you then tie that into, and again, you could break that down. You could look at obviously something that's really, really simple, which could be like a plan, a cheat sheet, some meal ideas, or just something that's going to be like really, really low level that's going to be easily accessible. That now might be like a mini series. It might be a webinar, or it might be a test that you put in place. You know, it might be like beat the summer slump and don't let your summer holidays ruin the incredible progress that you've made. Like mini-series, webinar, whatever it now might potentially be. What can you now do that actually allows you to now be the go-to person who's now being forward-facing, who's actually now adding value and you're able to bring to it the attention where people are, how they're currently thinking, and actually how they can now connect to you on an even higher level. Because when you do that, you extend the runway. When you just focus on giving, when you just focus on that connection piece, when you focus on being able to communicate, and I like to use the term like dancing on their brain, where they're like, that's where I am. That's how I'm thinking. That's what I'm struggling with. That's what I'm going through. How do they know that? That's when you now know that you're creating another layer of connection. That's when you're creating another layer of relationship and also depth and trust. And that's the very foundation, especially with the market that we're currently in, that people now need more so than anything else. So use this summer to get ahead. Use this summer to build equity within the marketplace. Use this summer to be consistently good and be the person that's now turning up and is not using the summer as this like, well, nobody's buying, so what's the point? And it's a get out of jail free card. Use this summer to go, right, okay, what can I control? What can I now do? How do I want to turn up? How do I want to behave? What do I want to focus on? And where do I now want to be? In what position do I want to put myself in? So you're now building that momentum, you're building that equity, you're building the trust, you're building the relationships, because you now know that the work will pay off. You just maybe can't see it yet. And it's just being able to have that greater foresight. And that comes back down to obviously the 365 plan. Having the strategy, having the system, being able to understand the customer journey, knowing what you're launching, when you're launching it, understanding what are you currently targeting and working towards. So you just don't feel as though that you're just winging it and you're going into every single month just going, I need to make sales. I just need to make sales. And then you're just trying to pull something out your back pocket that's some random thing that's just kind of stuck together just to try and get some bums on seats, because you don't feel great. The customers don't feel great. It feels winged. It doesn't feel aligned. You don't feel in control. There's not a level of sustainability, enjoyment, or longevity, and you just are constantly then revolving, which is why whenever you're running a high performance business, you now need to make sure that you've obviously got the back end in terms of the system, the support, the structure, but you then also got the front end, which is obviously looking at, well, what's the plan? What's the strategy? What are we doing? When are we doing it? How are we currently doing it? So you can then reverse engineer in exactly the same way as you now would for any client who's now going on a journey with you. So there's 5 things that I think will be incredibly advantageous. I've seen, I've used, other coaches have used, that have been really beneficial. And your business does not live or die based upon the 12 weeks over the summer, just exactly the same as the Christmas period, as an example. It's being able to zoom out and obviously look and think in a far, far bigger, more expansive way. But I know sometimes when you're in it and there's challenge, it can feel difficult and you can't read the label when you're inside the bottle, and that can be frustrating and then lead to you emotionally not making the best and most informed decisions. And that impacts how your business grows, who you take on, how you turn up, and the alignment you have with what you're actually doing and why you started this in the first place. So if you found this advantageous, I'd absolutely love to know. If you haven't done so, go and check out the free business success test. Go and download these resources. They'll be massively and incredibly advantageous for you. And if this episode has been positive and you've been able to gain, and I've been able to provide some value, I'd love for you to be able to share it with another coach. Until next time, have an incredible day, whatever you're up to, and I shall speak to you soon. Take care.